Pegasus can infiltrate that, but let's see. Call live, good morning. But Pegasus is the dangerous man as it is right. You never really know what it's seeking for.
build every morning. Now because your money done, you come with conniving morning. Then you had your pocket full, in a build every morning. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me morning. Yes, morning, neighbor. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, I don't want you conniving morning. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. A 2 pound note and a kill the piece. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor. Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph.
Never Joe, never Joe, never Joe. Oh, money, never,
money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money, I don't want you conniving money. Money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money, you can keep your conniving money. When you've been knocked for a bum, in a bill tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money.
Marching towards the shining future, courage high, the past is gone. Overcoming fear and counting out the glory, summer stone. Through the storm clouds dark and glory, through faith's lightning flash and flame, one republic of Guyana, glorify Guyana's name. Forward, forward, youthful nation, rang with power beyond man's might. May his strength God ever grant you to strive unceasingly for right. From Guyana's basement summit to white surface streets that rain, build thy people, dear Guyana, strong, united, loyal, free.
It's Obia. Other people walking. It's high science.
I was expecting it.
Yes, right? Certainly.
So don't be afraid, man. Don't be worried.
Against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places. Yes, good. All right, good. So, welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry for that brief interruption. You know the battle is real. The battle is fought on all fronts. Right? That's why when some people looking for a physical battle, it's a spiritual one. Right? When some people looking for guns and knives and arrows and spears, it's Obia. Other people walking. It's high science. Good. The government is using high science against us. Right? But it's not the obvious science. It's science, it's information technology. It's science and technology they're using. Right? And so let me continue from where I was. I was saying, listen, we got to be prepared to confront what is happening as a people. collectivity, unless we confront what is happening as a community, a citizenry of this country, we are going to end up in a country similar to South Africa, apartheid South Africa. Many of you might say this is far-fetched. You're not likely to have apartheid in 2022. Well, apartheid is well, alive and well around the world. It might be in different forms. But when you look at what's happening in Guyana, when you look at what this wicked and corrupt administration, the mafia, is allowing to be perpetrated against its citizens, you know that we're heading for apartheid Guyana. Imagine your citizens are being relegated to second-class citizens in their own country, working with ExxonMobil. You can't eat unless massa is done eating. So unless the expats, unless the foreign nationals are done eating, Guyanese citizens working on the production vessels cannot eat. Guyanese citizens working in the oil production sector cannot eat until the whites and the executives of ExxonMobil is finished eating. If that is not scraps off of the table in 2022, you tell me what that is. You tell me what that is. And our government is sitting back and accepting that. Polari Joe at the Ministry of Labor is satisfied with the explanation given. The Bishop Bishop at the Ministry of Works, under whose purview the oil industry should come, is satisfied with that. What really is happening in this country? Where the people who are supposed to be representing the masses are allowing outsiders to come and treat the masses anyhow for as long as they get their way. And what is their way? For as long as the U.S., who is the guardian angel as far as I'm concerned of ExxonMobil, allows the PPP hacks in office to do as they like, then ExxonMobil could do as they like. And so the PPP's intention to do as they like is to line their pockets, to empower themselves and their cronies. And for as long as they can get to do that, ExxonMobil could do as it likes. Imagine you accepting about $10,000 US a day for the oil company to mess up the environment of this country, which in turn will mess up the health of the citizens of this country, simply because you want to get to those you like. And Guyanese are sitting back, some of us unaware of what is happening. Some of us don't give a damn what is happening because money make it. But rest assured, all the money that people are talking about in making under this corrupt administration may not be able to save your life. Let's say I don't rejoice in anybody's death, but I like to use popular figures to illustrate when I speak. That's how I teach. I use everyday occurrences so you can understand what's happening. Uncle Paul was flown from this country to Colombia for treatment when he contracted COVID. The ordinary Guyanese can't fly from here to Latem if they are sick. But Uncle Paul was able to charter a flight from Guyana to Colombia when he became COVID infected. But you know what? With all of his resources, he died. He died. It's the reality. Regardless of how much money we accumulate, when the time comes for us to die, we're going dead. And so regardless of how rich this country can become, by allowing flaring, by allowing pollution of the atmosphere, when the pollutants in the atmosphere starts to affect our health, our respiratory health, then we are going to realize that all the money that we collecting from oil and pollution, we still gonna dead. PPP doesn't care about that. The PPP is concerned that they can do cloak and dagger and do zombie economics and shows that the country is doing better under their watch. What is better? Is better measured in money? Is better measured in money? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world yet loses his soul? The good book says that, or asks the question. What is better? Are we doing better because we're producing oil? Are we living a better quality of life? Is our atmosphere as pristine as it was before oil production? The fishermen are complaining. The catch is reduced. You know why the catch is reduced? Because the area where oil is being produced has become endemic to the well-being of the fishes that dwelled there previously. And so they have migrated, they're gone. Either they're dead out or they move out. But the cabal is telling us how well they're doing. When your source of proteins has been depleted, because fish for Guyanese is a cheap source of protein. Understand that? Fishes for Guyanese is a cheap source of protein. And so when you're not getting enough catch and the price goes up on the market, Guyanese will be able to consume less. And so at the end of the day, your nutritional needs are not going to be met. But the PPP collecting $10,000 a day for Exxon to pollute our environment. Right? Anyways, and thought that there is no water in Kanji. Y'all see Sheikh Bash? Sheikh Bash, there is no water in Kanji. The people in Kanji are complaining they ain't getting water, buddy. They don't get water. So anybody from Gaiwa who is on this feed this morning, y'all hit up Sheikh Bash and tell him that the people in Kanji, and they show lots of other areas, are not getting water. Right? They're not getting water. So tell them that. Well, if my volume is low, begging you, turn up your instrument. Because this morning is a challenge morning. Right? And we can't fix everything in the show. And I'm not prepared to not do the show. Because that is what they want me to not do this morning. They don't want me to do the show because of this what I'm going to tell you about. You know, when the teacher enters the classroom to start the day's topic, he has the question. It's called prior knowledge. How many of you have heard of Pegasus? Indicate in your messaging. How many of you have heard of Pegasus? What do you know Pegasus to be? That's what I want. So tell me what you know about Pegasus. Have you heard about Pegasus? What is Pegasus, class? Let's talk. We got to talk the things. And while I'm waiting for your answer, I'm going to play this little piece of a program we did on the 3rd. Listen to this while you tell me what Pegasus is. My volume up? Nope.
Present structure of Guyana. It will not happen. Nobody will build the cat. Nobody. No matter what you say. You can say it, I can say it. We want justice. Justice will never come under this Guyana that we have presently. It will never happen. The only option, the only way it will happen if it's not divided is a revolution. Then you put all manjack, politicians, corrupt police, corrupt whoever, businessmen, you put them in jail. If you don't put them in jail, you're afraid to house them in Guyana, you exile them. Take them away, never to return. And under this structure of Guyana presently, that can't happen. The opposition wouldn't do it. Okay? No Guyanese group right now in Guyana is not prepared to do that. Two options we have. You separate, you have a corrupt Guyana and a democratic Guyana, or we have a revolution. Whether it's going to be good or it's going to be bad. It will not be different. It will not be better. Get out. One other point, the reason why Guyanese are not being able to watch your program, Guyanese in Guyana, this is what they did to Gavin Machu's show. They're in charge of your program. They're blocking your fans so that you cannot educate Guyanese at home. I spoke to many Guyanese, family of mine, and they don't know what's going on. Why? Because the regime, whether they're being helped or not, I don't know, but that's what they're doing. They're listening to your calls. They're being in charge of the feed that you're getting, and this is done through your provider, sir. That's what they're doing. Is that part of this cyber security new legislation that was passed? I don't know. Is it against the freedom of speech in Guyana? I don't know. You guys need to investigate that, and they're going to take it further. People were talking last night on a program stating the Chinese are putting down lines, and they're going to put cameras and watch every move you make and what's not. That is bound to happen because the politicians fail Guyanese. They sold Guyana out. When the Chinese get a foothold in Guyana, there's nothing none of us can do. First of all, the two main services that are there to protect and serve us, they're part of the group of corrupt people. The Chinese will pay them. They will pay the police, they will pay the army. They must be, they always have individuals that are weak. They will put profit above any other thing, no matter what we say. And who's going to be in charge of prosecuting those people? Tell me. Point one politician in Guyana on both sides, which will do what they're supposed to be doing. Sure.
but when I don't, they give us an echo. So I was saying, Roger Can is saying that what this woman, this caller was saying is total nonsense. For the providers to prevent you hearing the program, they have to block the entire internet or shut down the entire internet. No, that is not true. Roger Can, that is not true. Okay? And many of us are of that opinion because we really don't understand how the internet works. Right? We really don't understand how the internet works. And so many of us take it for granted that once we are getting programming on the internet, everything is okay. No, everything is not okay. The caller raised an important point last week, and that was your internet service providers are interfering with your ability to see and hear certain things. Okay? I want to ask a question. I asked an earlier question. What is Pegasus? Everybody has indicated that Pegasus was a winged flying horse, mythical. Pegasus is the oldest hotel in Guyana, and so on and so forth. I'm asking you another question. How safe is your smartphone? How confidential are your conversations? If you notice, the title of this morning's program is Who is Listening? I want to know who is listening when I'm talking to you on this program. And so I'm asking you these questions so you can indicate if you're listening. Pegasus is the oldest hotel in Guyana. Pegasus was a winged horse, etc. Do you trust your smartphones and devices? Do you trust them? Let us get into the science and technology here, and I'm begging you, share the program. Share it. Share the program. Let's start with your internet and your internet service provider. I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. Some people might believe that it's my intention to sabotage a Guyanese company or a Guyanese business. Right? For as much as Guyanese businesses can thrive, I am happy because it makes me a proud Guyanese. But for as much as I recognize that Guyanese businesses can be used to do harm to the citizenry and be anti-democratic, I have a responsibility to make it known. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. I've constantly said to you that a lot of us over the years have gotten frustrated with poor quality of service coming from GT&T, and we have gone to private service providers. But as an individual, I've always decided that I will stick with GT&T. Because while it is my firm belief that the PPP has shares in GT&T, I do not believe that they have enough shares to control the policies of GT&T. And so I take my chances there. Right? I take my chances over GT&T because I believe ATN, who are the majority owners of GT&T, will have a more controlling impact on what the company does because they have to be governed by laws in the United States and so on. And so despite the fact PPP might have a few shares, a little interest in GT&T, I don't think they can use GT&T the way they can use eNetworks. eNetworks is owned by friends and cronies of the PPP, if not the PPP itself. GT&T, what am I saying? E-Networks is owned by Vishuk Prasad, if I remember the name clearly, the son of Ripudaman Prasad. Ripudaman Prasad was a leader in the PPP. Right? And so the belief is the E-Networks outfit is PPP. It was facilitated by the PPP. And I believe controlled in a major way by the PPP. The resources to establish a business, an entity like E-Networks is not easy to come by. First and foremost, the licensing. If you look at the licensing of E-Networks, E-Networks is one of the only private entities in this country to be granted license to land the fiber optic cable in Guyana. GT&T was able to land the fiber optic cable in Guyana. I think Digicel had to go through hell and razor to get the land the fiber optic cable in Guyana. E-Networks was able to land the fiber optic cable in Guyana. And those who understand technology, E-Networks infrastructure is LTE, long-term evolution. And when you have LTE services, when you have LTE capacity, it means long-term is long-term. You can keep evolving, you can keep rolling out all kinds of services. And so E-Networks is started by providing internet services. Then they went to movies, or they started with movies online. Then they went to internet services. E-Networks can provide phone services. VoIP, voice over internet protocol, VoIP calls. What we like to call internet calls, the correct name is VoIP, voice over internet protocols. Right? I want you to follow this discussion. Follow it, I'm begging you. Follow it. And so now, if you go to E-Networks, there are different packages you can get. They started offering these packages before GT&T was able to offer them. You can go to E-Networks and you can get a package. I don't care. People might say this is advertising the business, but let's talk the business. You can get telephone. You can get movies or television, as we like to say. You can get surveillance, as in security cameras. Right? And lots more. Fax as part of a package. In the more developed world, that's what you get. You get packages. So you go to the company, you apply for the internet service, and you don't just get internet service. You get a lot of add-ons for additional costs that makes the bundle and makes it attractive and nice. That's what you can get from E-Networks. They were able to offer a lot of these even before GT&T. So they were facilitated by the PPP. Why? It's a PPP entity. Let them prove otherwise to me. I know I've explained all of this to say to you that unlike GT&T, the PPP could do what they like through E-Networks. Unlike Digicel, the PPP can do what they like through E-Networks. And so if you were to ask me, it is safer to use Digicel and GTT for your communication services. I don't care what you call it. Okay? It is better to use, it is safer to use GT&T and Digicel because the possibility is smaller than it is with E-Networks for monitoring. And are you being monitored? Yes, you are being monitored. Is your freedom of association and freedom to information being interfered with? Yes, it is being interfered with. Let's talk about that interference. The caller last week said that they were interfering with your service providers were interfering with your access to information on the internet. Right? Well, you can't say nonsense. Let me explain it to you. And this is something I dabbled in, so I know what I'm saying. Or at least I think I know what I'm saying. Let me make it clear. I'm not a technology specialist. I ain't specialized in anything except communication, quite frankly. But I can say I'm educated and my education is round. Not like Ali. I know the word valedictorian. But let's talk. Every device that is used on the internet has an identity. Like every person, every citizen has a name, every device has an identity. If you want to identify me as an individual, you look for my thumbprint and other biodata. But my thumbprint is sure to identify me because nobody shares the same, well, when I say thumbprint, fingerprint generally. Nobody shares the same fingerprint. And so if you want to identify me, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you look for my fingerprint or my DNA. Right? If you want to identify a device on the internet, you look for its MAC address. MAC, MAC address. Among other things. But the MAC address of a device is sure to identify beyond the shadow of a doubt because it is unique to that device. MAC address. Keep that in mind. Right? So when you go to an internet service provider or a service provider in any sense of the word, an electronic service provider, when you go to a service provider, be it GT&T, be it Digicel, be it eNetworks, let's say just for internet, you may not know it, but you are allowed access to their service by your identity, the identity of your device. And so when they give you a username and password to access their service, as soon as you connect up and you access their service, they record your MAC address. It's automatic. Your MAC address automatically gets registered with the company. How do you access the service of the company? You access the service of the company by an address. They give you an address. It's like how you will live physically at 22 Section C, Buxton. You have a MAC address. If I remember, it is 16 characters long. IP address. For example, it is 192.168.3.2. About 8, what did I get here? 8 characters. Those characters are separated by hyphens. They are paired. Right? Mostly paired, let me say. But that's your IP address. Now, every person who is accessing a service at eNetworks gets an IP address dedicated to them. Well, it's not, yes, dedicated to them. Right? You have dedicated IP, you have static IP, you have an IP that keeps changing. Can't remember the name right now. But the reality is, you have to have an IP address. Now, this is what the internet company does to you. Your MAC address is connected to an IP address. And that's how you get service. And they have certain other systems that they use to regulate your service. Dynamic IP is the word I was looking for. To regulate your service. Now this is how they regulate your service. Everybody doesn't get the same speed and quality of service from an internet service provider. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. Right? And so if I go for a 128 megs, they use their software to program my MAC address to my IP address and say to my IP address, based on the settings, only 128 megs must go out, not more. Right? And so they know your MAC address. They know your IP address. They can recognize who you're visiting, when you're visiting them, how often you're visiting them, what you're visiting them for. And if they decide that they don't want you to get the benefits of why you're visiting and how often you're visiting and what you're visiting for, then they interfere with your service. First they can do is reduce your bandwidth between X time and Y time, so you will have difficulty accessing the programs you want to access during that time. That's one. Secondly, they can outright block your service from X time to Y time so that you don't get any access. Just as how you get disconnected when you don't get paid, when you don't pay your fees, that's what they can do if they don't want you to access a service. If they don't want you to access Facebook at a certain time, they can program the system to block you from Facebook at that time. And so you're getting all of these difficulties accessing Facebook, but you realize you can access YouTube, and you can access CNN, and you can access WhatsApp, but you're not getting to access Facebook because they're messing with your service at that time. Why do you think with the internet hubs in your communities, the children can't get to go to porn sites? They can't get to go to Facebook because it is so programmed to prevent them doing that. And that is what your internet service provider has the ability to do. I don't want to get too technical. I'm trying to explain it in layman's language. But that is what they have the ability to do. And they have been doing it. They can profile you from your internet use. And that is why leading up to the 2020 elections, they were able to profile lots of Guyanese. And use what they call bots. Or let me say robots. To target you with certain kinds of messages. Cuss you out. Call you black dog. And all of that. In many instances, a lot of people who've been cussing you out and calling you black dogs were not even Guyanese. But these are things you will come to understand. And these are things we have to come to understand. So they profile you. And they target you for certain kind of actions which will mess with your psyche and get you where they want you, how they want you, when they want you. But that's not enough. That is not the only thing they're doing in this country. They can listen to you. Remember, they had a telecommunication bill that was passed in the name of some security, where the government can actually record your conversations, or the telecommunication agencies can record your conversations for the government and make it available to them once there's a warrant. You're supposed to have a warrant to access certain kinds of information from the telecommunication company. Okay? That bill was passed under the PPP. And they have been using it. Don't tell yourself it has not been used. They have been using it. But like I said, because they might have a foothold in GT&T, but not to do as they like when they like. And they can't do as they like when they like in Digicel. And the possibility is they can do as they like when they like through e-networks. But e-networks is not a majority service provider in this country. E-networks is not a majority service provider. And so they might not be having access to the subscribers in bulk that they would like to. Right? So they have gone a step further. They have gone a step further. And that is where Pegasus comes in. And Pegasus here is not the hotel, like what people feel. And it's not a winged horse, like what people feel. They might be hoping to shut down the program again because I am mentioning Pegasus. But I will forever mention Pegasus and let them shut it down as often as they can if they can. Right? But Pegasus is what we call a spyware. Pegasus is a spyware. Pegasus is a software that they are using to spy on citizens. It was developed by the Israelis. It was developed by the Israelis. And it can spy on you through your phones. You don't have to get your phone to activate Pegasus in it. I will use some videos to explain to you how Pegasus works. But I will say to you, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that this administration, this wicked and vindictive and corrupt and criminal mafia administration known as the PPP, has bought, presumably from Dubai. You see all them trips to Dubai and all them exchanges from Dubai? They bought presumably from Dubai. I don't care where I buy from, but I know for a fact that they bought it. About 3 months or so ago, this wicked administration bought Pegasus. Pegasus is a spyware that spies on every living creature, dog, cat, animal, whatever. It had even spied on the United States government. And Israeli and the US were at loggerheads over Pegasus. You heard this morning I said to you, I am seeing some magic, and I expected it, and it is part of what we will talk about this morning. I want the viewership move from 500 to 250, cut in half, blam. And then by the time I mentioned that to you, I said, blam again, and then it went to 0 when everybody got disconnected. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm convinced that I'm targeted for that kind of treatment, especially when I don't put certain security measures in place when I'm about to use my computer to start this program. And I deliberately left it wide open this morning to see the impact. And like expected, they lashed the program. Because my program is being monitored. It is identified for interference. There's an entire unit in the Prime Minister's office, overseen by Kwame McCoy, monitoring programs like these. In case you didn't know, I'm telling you how your tax dollars are being spent. Samu says continuous fake false narratives, drama and theatrics. Now they're coming with a destructive tech attempts. Don't worry them, let's talk. The evidence is there, don't worry yourself. Right? This is how they start to get access to your devices. How many of you have received calls from strange numbers recently? You have all these strange numbers calling you, and by the time you can answer, they utter a few words and they hang up. Part of the thing is, all they want you to do is answer. And by just answering those calls, they get access to your device. That is how powerful the thing is. In some instances, they hope that you will return a call because you're anxious to hear what this foreigner wants to tell you. In other words, what they're looking for is connectivity between your device and their device. And as long as that connectivity happens, they got you. You're a fish. They're fishing. P-H-I-S-I-N-G. Phishing. Or phishing, some people say, but it's phishing in computer language, it's phishing. You know, you throw out a hook there for somebody bite. That's what they've been doing. How many of you have seen all of these promotions? BAMSIA's 50th anniversary. Win free money by answering this. Do this by do that. All of those, people see them as scams. And people have been opening them. But all of those are methods that they use to get to access your devices, because all you have to do is open. But Pegasus is much more advanced than that. They're using what they call no-click technology. You don't even have to click for them to get into your device. You don't even have to. That is where your money is being spent. You're being monitored. I mentioned last week the Safe City solutions with the cameras that can pick you up, monitor communities and all of that. The long-range drones. Okay? All of those are part of this government's monitoring of its citizens. Anti-democratic practices. But Pegasus is the dangerous man as it is right now, because it is going to monitor the politicians and everybody else. And it is programmed to activate itself with certain keywords. I don't know what the keywords they are using in this country, but I would assume things like Jagdio and Ali and PPP and stuff like that. Good? But it has keywords. As soon as those words are mentioned, Pegasus gets to work. Finds your devices and connects itself. Right? Let's go to some videos. This morning's program is going to be a little extended, I think, because of the delay. But let's look at it. Let's start here.
नमस्कार दोस्तों, आइए बात करते हैं पेगासस स्कैंडल के बारे में। ये alleged scam।
All right, that's not English. Where's the English version? And if you think your iPhone is safe, don't fool yourself. Because they're using iPhones too.
Pegasus can do things on your phone that you can't even do.
It can activate any function on your phone. It completely mirrors it.
Amnesty International reports a massive leak of 50,000 phone numbers.
I think what the project is showing is the breadth and the scale of the abuse.
At the center of the probe is the Pegasus spyware.
It can look for your cameras. It can also take pictures.
It accesses your messages, your history.
It can listen to what you say, and it can also record you.
So yeah, Pegasus is pretty terrifying.
So what is Pegasus? It's a software created by an Israeli company called NSO Group, and the company says it's designed to track terrorists.
Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi journalist, was murdered. Several of the people that he was in touch with were surveyed by Pegasus. That should stop everyone and make us think. Cyber weapons are weapons. People get killed. My name is Eyal Weizmann. I am the Director of Forensic Architecture and also a professor at Goldsmiths.
I'm Shuri Molavi. I'm the lead Israel-Palestine researcher at Forensic Architecture.
People think of architecture as simply the design of objects and spaces, but architecture is a very useful tool in actually mapping human rights violations that are caught on camera.
We use spatial and media methodologies and technologies to investigate state and corporate violence.
We investigate police forces, we investigate the military, we investigate sometimes secret services.
Architects and artists, scholars, researchers, designers, developers, working together on a single investigation.
We worked very often on Israeli colonial violence in Palestine.
Until now, that has mainly involved things like checkpoints, roadblocks, military and police violence against Palestinians.
Today, contemporary colonialism is also digital. You need to control people.
And this is where the NSO Group comes in.
The NSO Group is an Israeli cyber surveillance company. It has emerged in a context of a whole ecosystem that emerged out of Israeli state surveillance of Palestinians.
The problem with Pegasus is that we don't know a lot of information. What we know is that the hack will either come in the form of a one-click hack, which means that you get a message on your phone, you click on that message, and then your phone is hacked. Or it comes in the form of a zero-click. And this is where the missed call on your phone is able to hack your phone.
Later version of Pegasus, they just send you a message, and the message carries the malware. This is called a WhatsApp hack. The NSO found a vulnerability within WhatsApp and used the software to actually as a doorway into people's phones.
Pegasus is sort of setting the stage for the new terrain of warfare against activists and civil society groups around the world.
Pegasus was on our radar for 3-4 years. We first heard about Pegasus when we were invited to investigate the 2014 disappearance of the students of Ayotzinapa. They've entered the town of Iguala and disappeared there.
Los 43 alumnos de Magisterio desaparecieron en Iguala Guerrero el 26 de septiembre de 2014, cuando fueron secuestrados por policías municipales que los entregaron a un grupo del crimen organizado. Sí, muchas evidencias de que autoridades de todos los niveles del gobierno obstruyeron la justicia.
We collected enormous amount of information about that act of disappearance. Videos, photographs, phone calls, CCTV camera footage.
There's evidence, according to our investigation, that there was state collusion and state involvement in that disappearance.
That was an extremely controversial case in Mexico, exposing huge level of state complicity.
When reporters like Carmen Aristegui begins to report on it, or lawyers like Centro Pro try to hold the state accountable in petition, they become targets of the state. And it's exactly these people who were targeted by Pegasus.
We understood that the state is very interested in our investigation, that it felt threatened by what we were discovering. We knew personally many of the people that were on that list, and we understood that we needed to act.
Our friends and our collaborators were targeted by Pegasus. So naturally, we started to use our own skill sets.
And what we could do was actually use the sort of open source ethos of forensic architecture.
So open source investigation is looking at everything that's in the public domain Everything that is posted, everything that is mentioned, that is accessible to us publicly.
Each story and each target of NSO was reported on in isolation.
We started to look at every report and article, account of hacking that we could find.
So by collecting information from India and Rwanda, from Palestine and from Mexico, putting them together
in a platform, a 3D interactive space that allows you to see physical violence, digital violence, corporate transactions, exposures of hacks, and contextual events.
Our ethos of open source investigation allows us to gain another insight.
NSO has gone on a PR campaign to talk about why Pegasus is significant, why it's important for governments to have access to Pegasus. And a large part of the discussion is anti-terror.
Now, what we've found in this process, that the people that were most interesting for those repressive regimes were actually investigators.
These are journalists, activists, opposition figures, religious figures, dissenters, people living in exile, community organizers, far from what anyone would imagine a so-called terrorist to be.
Knowing that you are targeted extract a huge psychological toll on you. Perhaps do not want to speak to people because you don't want to compromise them. So you stop communicating. Pegasus cuts the network of practice that confronts state crimes.
I've spent the past year and a half talking to over a dozen targets of Pegasus. So these are people who had experiences with arrests and imprisonment. And yet, when they were describing their experience of hacking, some were close to tears. They were talking about nightmares, psychological distress, emotional distress. Our project is really a way to push back at this attempt by states to cut those networks.
I think people connect to this story intuitively because everyone now has a smartphone. And when your smartphone becomes a surveillance device, people are terrified, and they're justifiably terrified.
It's terrifying some of the strongest people in the world. Pegasus is so advanced that it's very difficult to capture all of the instances of hacking. Now, we collected this information knowing that it's only a fraction of what the actual hacks are. With this limited data set, we're still able to determine patterns and relations of how digital violence works. And in determining patterns and relations, you're also able to tell a story. That, of course, the terrain of warfare in Mexico is very different than the terrain of warfare in Saudi Arabia. But when you place them alongside each other, you realize that physical and digital operate in very similar ways in both of these spaces.
When we launched that project, we had people from all over the world speak about their experience. Mexicans with Rwandans, Palestinians with Emiratis. People from all over the world actually joined by being targeted by this malware.
And happily, I mean, if there's one thing that I'm walking away from with this project, is that it is a failed project on behalf of the state. People are not silencing. If anything, they are becoming more empowered, more organized, angrier.
Standing up and saying, we continue our work, we continue resisting, we will call our states to account, and we are not afraid.
We are creating networks to push back against all of that silencing and cutting that software like Pegasus does.
Joining me now is Peter O'Brien.
The company sells only to military, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies in 40 unnamed countries, and says it rigorously vets its customers' human rights records before allowing them to use its spy tools. You see there, that is what NSO says. But don't be fooled. Remember, the spy laptop was only supposed to be available. Okay? The spy laptop was only supposed to be available to governments. And when Roger Khan and others were caught with a spy laptop, investigation pointed to Leslie Ramsamy being the person who facilitated it. Right? So just like the spy laptop was facilitated, the acquisition, this government has recently acquired Pegasus. And they're unleashing it against the citizens of this country.
Joining me now is Peter O'Brien, our very own technology editor. Peter, can you tell us a little bit more about the NSO group, which actually developed and sells this spyware?
Yeah, so it's far from the only private company which sells commercial spyware in this manner, but it's fair to say now that it's the most infamous. So they have a headquarters near Tel Aviv, and they've been operating since 2010, but they really started to come into the headlines in 2016 when they were accused of helping to spy on a dissident in the UAE. Now, these latest revelations show their Pegasus software, which is their flagship software, appears to be misused on a vast scale. So NSO clients, as you say, have been linked to a list of more than 50,000 phone numbers. This includes activists, journalists, business executives, politicians. Of course, NSO is denying all allegations that it's been facilitating human rights abuses. It says it only sells its technology to governments which have been approved by Israel. And this is for the express purpose, they say, of helping stop terrorism and criminality.
So how does Pegasus get into your phone, and what does it do once it's actually in your phone?
Right, so it's an incredibly powerful bit of malware because it can slip in so easily, and once it's there, it can do pretty much anything. So an older iteration actually relied on something called spear phishing, which is where you receive a text message or an email. It's got a malicious link. You inadvertently click the link and it installs this software. Now, though, it's able to reach phones using something called a zero-click attack, which is as scary as it sounds. It means it can exploit a vulnerability in one of the apps on your phone without any interaction from yourself. So we don't know all the examples of how it might use this, but one has been WhatsApp. Pegasus
Growing
has
up
been
poor
known
in
to
the country
infect
in
a
the
phone via a WhatsApp call, and you don't even have to pick up the call for it to infect your phone. App developers are obviously constantly trying to patch these vulnerabilities, but they're always playing catch up. And where these attacks don't succeed, you can, of course, install Pegasus wirelessly if you're near the target, or even steal a mobile phone and install it that way as well. Once it's there, it has root access to your phone. That means it can do pretty much anything. It can read your messages, it can read your emails, it can look at all the photos, videos, and other media on your device. It can access your contacts. It knows where you are because of GPS, and probably the scariest for me is the fact that it can listen to your microphone and it can turn on your camera without you knowing. Not only that, it can read the keys you're typing, so it can read your keystrokes and will know every password you're typing into your phone.
It is absolutely frightening, but this is a story which is very close to home, because it turns out that at France 24, at least one of our staff members were on the list of those leaked numbers. Yep. How can you tell if your phone has indeed been infected?
Well, the bad news is that it's next to impossible to detect by yourself, and even with a team of cybersecurity experts, it's going to be very difficult. Your phone doesn't display any symptoms as if it was sick. It doesn't slow down or show any sort of sign that Pegasus is there. And researchers actually believe the latest version of Pegasus might exist in your phone's temporary memory. So it's RAM rather than its hard drive. So if you go sniffing around in its files trying to find the malware, you're not going to find it there because it's on a temporary file. If it's uninstalled, it won't leave any trace behind it. It's quite unclear at the moment what methods the Pegasus project team have been using to figure out which mobile numbers on the list have been linked to to verify that they've got Pegasus on them. They must be using careful monitoring of data being sent from the phone via the internet. At this point, if you want to get rid of it, want to get sure you don't have Pegasus, the only way to do so is get rid of your phone and change your mobile number. According to Citizen Lab, even a factory data reset of your phone does not remove it.
Unbelievable. And even then, if you get a new number, you stand at risk of, again, attracting the attention of people who use that malware. Thank you so much, Peter O'Brien, for that.
trying to listen from near and far. You never really know what they're seeking for. We got that situation in this country. The PPP is using malware to spy on the citizens of this country. Just like they were using the spy laptop in the 2000s, in the times of troubles. Now they are using Pegasus to spy on every citizen of this country. We're not safe. There's no democracy in this place. This is a dictatorship. Let the government tell us. I challenge them to say that I'm being malicious. I challenge them. I always say when I come and I talk, my ducks are lined up. And so I rest confident in saying to you this morning, approximately 3 months ago, this wicked and stinking dirty administration, the illegitimately installed cabal, acquired Pegasus, what is considered perhaps the most dangerous spyware in the world, to interfere with the freedoms of its citizens. And Guyanese must not sit back and take that lightly. It is 8 minutes past the 9 o'clock hour. I can't take a lot of calls like I usually do, but I'll give you the opportunity to make a few. Let's say we go up to 8:50, 9:15, 9:30, not further than that. So keep your calls short and to the point. The lines are open. 6225933 is the number to go.
Never Joe. Never Joe. Oh, money, never money.
Never money. Money, never money. Money, I know what you can even money. Money, never money. Money, never money. Money, you can keep, you can even money. When you've been a corrupt in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full in a bill, tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money.
Yes, money, never
Money, never money. Money, never money. Money, now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, joker. Neighbor, joker. Neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. A £2 note and a guild piece. That's all the money that me walk for.
money, never
Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, I know what you can even money.
Oh, Joseph.
Stay on the line. Good morning.
Yes.
Because it's not a calling time yet. Be quiet.
Oh, sorry.
Morning, neighbor. Morning. You're welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Remember, we do the pre-recorded or the replay from 6 to 7 or thereabout, and then I come on live. Always remember that. Good? But this morning, I'm going to mix up the show a little. In that we have a lot of things to talk about. This spyware and the government's invasion of your privacy and the attack on democracy by the PPP. A lot we have to talk about. But I know some people didn't get to call in yesterday and they were anxious to have their say on this situation. And so I'm going to entertain calls intermittently. I also have someone who works in ICT, information and communication technology, who will call, and we are going to continue to have this discussion. You might be wondering where Dr. Hines is. Dr. Hines is unable to make today's show because he is unwell. As far as I know, it's not anything life-threatening, so y'all don't go getting worried and so on. He's unwell, right? And I'm sure maybe we'll have him tomorrow. But for today, we'll continue the discussion about who is listening, what freedom you have, what democracy you have. Who are the enablers of the erosion of democracy and freedom of choice and everything in this country? We'll continue that discussion. Call it live, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, everyone in diaspora. Privacy. That's basically what you're talking about this morning, and the erosion of privacy. Privacy is a matter as old as time itself. To undermine privacy, as Pegasus was designed to do and has been doing around the world, particularly in Guyana. Now, if I were to undermine a lawyer's privacy, a lot of lawyers need to have privacy. For example, let's say, for example, Nigel Hughes is working on the Oren Boston's case. And the government knows all of Nigel Hughes' strategies before he's able to go to the court. That's how Nigel Hughes' case can be severely undermined. And that is how also the judiciary system, which is supposed to be upholding a balance of democracy, that's also undermined. I remember someone telling me years ago, well, not years ago, sorry, months ago, that they had some very uncompromising pictures of Rux and George. That's what they were telling me. And I said to myself, what do you mean uncompromising pictures of Rux and George? They said uncompromising pictures of Rux and George. I said, what are you talking about? Nude pictures? So when I hear about Pegasus, you see, people, that's the same way they had information about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could not believe, as Secretary of State of the United States, that they were uncompromising emails about Hillary. And these emails were alleged to be linked up with deep state and pedophilia, pedophiles, abuse of small children sexually. Now, whether Hillary was involved with that or not, because her privacy was undermined, these things were made public. It's the same situation with the person who was telling me, who works in information technology in Guyana, that they had compromising pictures of Rux and George, a judge in Guyana. So, when I hear this morning on the show that the Guyana government is very possibly involved in using this type of technology, it makes you wonder, as the guy was saying, if a judge in Guyana, they are compromising photographs of the chief judge in Guyana. I wonder if she even knows about it. You see what I'm saying? Then there is laptop Ramsamy with the laptop years ago. So there were discussions between former police commissioner Winston Felix years ago. This is in the public news. There is discussions with Culture News editor. So if the police department is wondering who is safe, sometimes you watching me, but you don't know who watching you. You listening to me, you don't know who listening to you. So it would be in the best interest of the Guyana judiciary and the Guyana Bar Association, lawyers and union representatives to get to the bottom of it. Because just when you think it's not your business, they came for the Jew. I'm not a Jew, so I'm not concerned. Somebody might got your dirty laundry already in their flash drive, just waiting for the right time. I was asking a person to send me the information on Roxanne George's uncompromising photographs. They said, not yet. So I'm still waiting. I said, but if you can't send me the photographs, tell me how many you got. He said he got more than 5. So I said, bro, be careful. Anyway, Mr. Kodaki, thank you for accepting the call this morning. And we must be vigilant, especially the Bar Association, doctors, and persons in the Guyana Joint Services. Things are out there on y'all. It's just a matter of time. Thank you for listening, Mr. Kadaki.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Now, the reality is, those who know the PPP know that the PPP has always been collecting information on folks, especially in public service, because it is that information which they use to leverage and have their way, right? There's nobody who can tell me that PPP didn't have the filter Henry Green before they made him Commissioner of Police. Because even if they didn't, the U.S. had the filter Henry Green. And the U.S. had advised the PPP not to appoint Henry Green Commissioner of Police because they had information which connected him to the underworld and which suggested that he was all sorts of things except an angel. And the PPP went right ahead and they appointed him. Why? The PPP likes to appoint people who are of questionable character because they have the dirt on them and so they can control them. It's as simple as that. PPP's politics is strictly about power, right? If you look at the behavior of people like Putin, many would argue that Jagdeo perhaps wants to fashion himself off of Putin. The PPP behaves like the Russians, or would like to behave like the Russian. A lot of these psychopaths, that's what I see them as. Are about control and total control of people, of processes. And in terms of people, they will collect all the filth they can on you and they will use that to leverage you. Remember when in the 2000s, when the joint services were hot on the heels of Roger Cannon, had him running helter-skelter when Felix decided he was going to carry the fight to the Cannon organization, whatever it was, the Phantom or the Killing Squad, whatever. One of the last resort of Khan or his henchmen, whoever, was to release a recording which Kofi has alluded to, of a conversation between Felix and I think Basil Williams at the time. Okay? With the hope that that was going to basically cause Felix to get cold feet and back off. When that didn't work to a large extent, Roger Kanu did a full-page advertisement in the Kaichu News at the time. saying that he was working for the government. And he detailed some of the things he represented working for the government. When the government changed, or even before the government changed, as a matter of fact, while the PPP was still in office, and the coalition raised certain issues in this society about the treatment of citizens and the behavior of government and so on, and it threatened certain lines of action, the PPP always came out. Barra Jagdeo in particular always came to the fore and say, if you all got the evidence, go right ahead and put it in public. If you all got the balls, go right ahead and put it in public. Because you will be just as embarrassed as you try to embarrass the PPP. Okay? And they were not veiled threats. They were open threats. Jagdeo said forever, we got the dirt on the PNC. We know what y'all were doing. During the 2000s, we know what you were doing before, we know what you're doing currently. And you don't get the dirt by being good Christian people, by being angels. You get the dirt by mining the dirt. And that is, I'm saying the PPP has always had a history of spying on its opponent or opponents. And so many times when you see questionable decisions coming out of the courts, questionable behavior by public officials and so on, you ask yourselves, how is this possible? Why are they doing this or why are they doing that? It is because the PPP has always had the dirt on them and is not afraid to use it for leverage. And so the acquisition of Pegasus, this spyware, is just in keeping with the PPP's manner of governance. This spy laptop that we talked about was used by Roger Khan as a representative of the PPP, according to him, to triangulate phone calls. Now one has to understand, to triangulate a call, you must first have a number. And so some access must have been given to Roger Khan then to a database of numbers. What were the numbers these quote-unquote criminals were using? Here's a list of the numbers the criminals are using. These will form your database from which you will triangulate and establish other contacts in terms of who they're calling and how frequently they're calling them and how long the conversations are going on for. And then you will triangulate and know what are the locations they usually operate from, where they are while making a call. And a lot of those people are identified in that way. Right? Many persons argue that the laptop was confiscated and went back to the US, while others argue that there were at least 2 of those laptops. I don't know how many they were. But what I know is that the evidence is out there, and it was out there, that this kind of equipment was being used against citizens in this country. Argue and tell me that they were criminals. I am saying, as old people say, the same stick which is used to beat black dog is used to beat white dog. And so in short, Yes, it is used to track criminals, but yet, yes, it is used to also monitor upstanding citizens. One would assume that the judges and magistrates and members of the judiciary and lawyers and so on are not criminal-minded or criminally intent. But like Kofi is alluding to, somebody told him that they have compromising photograph of a leading judicial figure in this country. How did they get them? I never forget that Ram Sarup, what's his name? I think he is the man at Ministry of Trade now. No, he's at Small Business Bureau. What Ram Sarup is. I never forget that Ram Sarup was an ardent critic of the PPP. And he made a sudden swing like Claudette swung to be an ardent supporter and defender of the PPP after he was accused of spying on some of his tenants, video recording some of his tenants. He had a property there in New Garden Street, New Garden and what? I am not sure what that other street is. Is it Amund? No, it couldn't be Amund. It's the street after Amund Street. Anyways, right? Peter Ram Sarup had a property in Queenstown. I don't know if he still has it. At the junction of New Garden and something, the same street that National Data Management has an office. But he was accused of spying on some young ladies who were renting one of his apartments. As a matter of fact, word on the street was that one of the ladies was by Jagdio's fling, girlfriend, whatever. But the argument was that she was used in what one might consider sting operation to tame Ram Sarup. And Ram Sarup became an ardent supporter of the PPP thereafter. One would argue that in an attempt to prevent Forshaw Street, to prevent himself being imprisoned, because the PPP, when the PPP wants to jail you, they will jail you. They only got to put their hand on the evidence. Right? You have to strike a deal somewhere or other. And so I up until this day believe the deal was that we got to filter you. And so you will do our bidding. Right? Ricardo saying we will talk about the interview another day, not today. I'm focusing on people's privacy and what this government is doing. We can't talk about everything at one time, otherwise we will not do justice to what we're talking about. Right? And so y'all stop asking me, it's a distraction. Good. So they always collect the filth on you. And many argue that the former opposition leader Joe Armand was forced to be as quote-unquote lame as he was because the PPP has filtered him. Many argue that the powers that be in the PPP, in the AP and UFC, were reluctant to prosecute the likes of Jagdio and Ashni Singh and Anil Nandlal and all of them. For crimes committed while they were in office, because they were afraid that the PPP had filtered them and would make them public And so they had to tread lightly. And I have no doubt that the PPP had been collecting any government in office for 23 years and smelling itself would collect and archive as much filth as it could on its opponents. It's done in Russia, it's done in the USA itself. Coffee spoke about the Hillary Clinton emails. Right? It's done all over the world. But it's particularly done in a reckless manner, and the information gathered is used recklessly, as I want to say, in undemocratic countries. And I dare argue that Ghana is one of those countries that I can consider undemocratic. You see, in the US, for example, the wiretapping laws, that was what I was referring to yesterday. Ghana actually did a modification of its telecommunication laws to include wiretapping, etc. There are wiretapping laws in places like the US. But for the state to get to wiretap a citizen, they have to go through the process and provide convincing evidence to the judges and whoever has oversight. Otherwise, those things are not acceptable in the court of law and so on. But understanding Ghana, you don't even need that information in the court of law to undermine people. All they do is leak it surreptitiously. Right? I understand there are lots of nasty videos circulating about some public figures. Who is collecting and who is distributing and who is releasing? Right? Pegasus. The acquisition of Pegasus and the use of Pegasus in this society must be frightening. And citizens must be aware of what the government is doing and confront it. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has a smart TV. Everybody has a tablet, a smart device, let's see. And those are the things which will give access to malware such as Pegasus. How do you prevent such attacks and such intrusion? Many will argue that you go to back to basic, Mango Pelter. Yes, the Mango Pelter will serve you up to a certain point. It will. But that also doesn't stop them from listening. Right? That doesn't also stop them from listening. The possibility is it will be more difficult for them to hack into your device to extract photographs and stuff that will compromise you. But there will still be voice recordings of you. Telephone companies always maintain recordings of conversations. And more so if the government requests that such recordings be done. Right? So this issue of the government spying on its citizens is an important one. It is one that we have to be aware of, and we have to take the necessary steps to protect our devices and ourselves from. Like you would have heard in the previous videos, it's not as easy as we are saying it. Good? I tell people I am convinced that my devices are bugged or hacked or interfered with in some way or other. Well, I generally don't have anything to be afraid of. I don't plan espionage. We haven't. This is being malicious. What will they take from my computer or my phone? to make public. A Caribbean pastime, somebody's daughter photograph. Sometimes it might be one of their own. Huh? Or a conversation between myself and somebody's daughter. I ain't homosexual, so they ain't got nothing gay, lesbian, queer, Rainbow Nation they could gather on me. I can tell you that. And Caribbean man don't like to, most Caribbean men don't like to be associated with LGBTQ. And I'm one of those. I don't want to be accused of any such thing. I respect people's right to make their choices. Right? But I know there's something they won't find about me. And so I'm not afraid. I don't engage in corruption. I don't plan espionage. I'm not a criminal. And so anything they could find on my devices are innocent in my mind. Innocent doings in my mind. So I'm not afraid. I will continue to confront the state on these issues. But there's some simple things people might be able to do in terms of protecting their privacy. Like I said, some of us will go back to the mango pelters. Right? Some of us will go up technology-wise. For example, there's something that's called a virtual private network. A VPN, it masks your location. It hides your location. You could be sitting here in Buxton on this program and it's showing that you are broadcasting from China. VPN has a cost. There's some free ones, like Hotspot Shield, but they don't give me a whole day's protection. Right? And so when you want to browse sensitive sites or you want to deal with sensitive information and so on, if you are dealing with that kind of stuff, then one form of protecting yourself is a VPN. VPNs are also working on Android devices and other phones. And so people can explore the use of VPNs, virtual private networks. Good? But for me, the most important way of preventing people access to the kind of information you don't want them to hear is not to discuss them on your phones and your devices. A phone call, hey, we need to talk, meet me at X place or Y place, or meet me at the usual place. Because the thing is, when you say X place or Y place too, you're giving people location to find you. Right? You're giving people location to find you. And this is the age when nobody has to be up close and personal to you to record your conversations, or to get videos, or to get photographs. Technology is so advanced that people can use all kinds of devices to record you from distances. If their intention is to kill you, well, we know that they got all kinds of high-powered weaponry being imported in this country illegally. Right? Those are things that you have to be aware of. You have to go back to the old time meet and greet and discuss. But you also have to be aware that possibilities exist that you can meet and greet and discuss and find yourselves in problems. Remember the Monroes, I think it was an army officer or former member of the Guyana Defense Force that was used to entrap the Monroes. They met up and they sat and they had their own gaffes, sometimes loose talk, as many of us will say. And that individual was recording them. And so that loose talk was used to punish the Monroes for quite a long time. I don't think that that family is overcome the trauma and everything that they had to go through under the PPP. Good? These are things we have to remind ourselves of and be aware of. How do you counter that? Citizens have a responsibility to counter the behavior of their governments when it is intruding on their privacy and affecting democracy. And while many will say that the meet and greet and so on is the best way or one of the safer ways, it is certainly one of the safer ways. That too has its risk. Because we now have in our borders, within our borders, long-range drones. And if you follow what has been happening on the international scene over the years in the fight against terrorism, for example, long-range drones have been used to identify location and target people and kill them. And so if this government wants to target you, they have in their arsenal long-range drones. And so they can pinpoint your location and they can listen to your conversation or do surveillance and all of that. Guyana simply is being a country that is being heavily surveilled right now, the citizens. Guyana got 2 spy centers, as I call them. One is in the compound of Castellani House, Homestretch Avenue and Blessingen Road. Spy center. Same place where Canu is. There's a building in that compound there dedicated to monitoring people through the use of cameras, etc. And then there's another one at the back of the Artichon Convention Center. That might be more modern. Right? Citizens are being watched all the time. And so they're not satisfied with watching you through the cameras that make up the smart city solution. They're not satisfied with watching movements of citizens on cameras that are connected to traffic lights and at certain junctions where all the traffic coming from particular directions and so on have to pass. They're not satisfied with that. They want to now listen to your conversations, and they now want to examine the content of your devices. And so they went and they bought Pegasus. Now, in any other country, I would believe, in any other country, citizens may very well have a right to request, because of the Freedom of Information Act, the request of government, information such as where was this device, where was this software sourced from, right? Where was this software sourced from? Who you buy it from? At what cost was it acquired? Right? What is it being used for? Certainly, things like these get ventilated through congressional hearings and so on in the US. Do we have that option in this country? Do we have a Freedom of Information Act in this country? Yes, we have. Yes, we have. But is it being used? Has anybody attempted to use it? Has anybody been able to get any useful information using the Freedom of Information Act in this country since the PPP was in government and is now back in government? The answer to that is no. The information czar that was appointed after the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act, or whatever they call it, was Charles Ramsden Sr. That man sat in that office for several years without producing a single public document a single document for the benefit of the public, and was being paid a multi-million-dollar salary yearly. When the coalition went to office, they challenged its continuity. In short, I think he was dismissed, and the government was sued, and they had to pay him a lot of money. Basil Williams will tell you more about that. Should tell you more about that. But you know what? Yesterday I read that Charles Ramsey Sr. is back, as the information's are. And the budget allocated for his office is much more than allocated for the office of the leader of the opposition, a constitutional office. His salaries exceed the allocation for the office of the leader of the opposition. And so, like you've been examining in everything else, observing in everything else, the PPP continues to put its enablers back in places that they have been, and they have functioned effectively in keeping with the desires of the PPP. And so Ramsey is a retiree who should be making right with his God, is back in the office there to block people access to information at the expense of the state. Remember, I always argue, recognizing the attitude of the PPP in the past. With oil money, the PPP's intent is to entrench itself in office. Here they talk about not leaving office for another 40 and 50 years, unless citizens of this country do what I deem necessary. That will be a reality. A government like the PPP, a group of people like the PPP, will make it difficult for them to be removed from power by the elections, or by, let me say broadly, by the ballot or the bullet. They will make it difficult for them to be removed from office by the ballot or the bullet. They are going to entrench themselves. You're going to have more people. They're going to invest. They're going to spend a whole lot more money on arms and ammunition and other coercive equipment to keep the citizens in line. They're going to spend more money on monitoring citizens like they're spending on Pegasus. They're going to spend more money on their own security apparatus, because they're going to become more paranoid as they continue to become more excessive in the misuse of state funds and more abusive to citizens of this country. Keep that in mind. I heard talk recently of, I think it's the same interview somebody is referring to, the expectation of a growing middle class. The only middle class that is expected to grow in this country will be the PPP and their cronies. Because even if you consider yourself a current middle class, the policies are likely to push you down. When the foreigners come and take the first class position, because the foreigners will come and they will take the first class position, because they will come with their foreign monies and they will buy up our properties as they are allowed to, and they will invest with the international spending power, and they will command the cream of this economy. And so those who tell themselves that they are on top currently will find themselves below them, and they will be considered the middle class. And those who are currently the middle class will be pushed further down the line. And so all the PPP is doing right now with all of these things is entrenching themselves. And the longer citizens take to act to defend their democracy and to defend their privacy, the more entrenched the PPP will be. I told you that there is someone who would want to share with us on this particular topic. Let me see if I'm able to get him. Right on cue. He's telling me he thought I would indicate when he should call. Well, I'm calling.
Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I don't know if you want to do this anonymously or you want to identify yourself to the viewers. The call is yours. Pardon?
I didn't get that.
I said I don't know if you want to be an anonymous contributor or you want to identify yourself to the viewers.
Oh, yeah, partially. That address me, Henry, but for the most part, I remain just anonymous for the moment.
Good.
But in terms of contributing here, I can offer my little insight.
I didn't hear you clearly, sorry.
Yes, no, I'm saying that I would offer my little information that I have to the...
Yes.
So,
all right, so the floor is yours. As I like to say, make your opening pitch.
oh, yes. Definitely we can see the landscape that we're heading into with the current government. And this did not start today or anytime recent. As you discussed before, this spy software during the Roger Khan's time with Leslie Ramsamy, etc. So we know that they have an intent on spying on persons, citizens within the country, whether they be opposition, etc., or any competitor, because it doesn't happen just politically, but it also happens in the business sphere as well, where they would want to find their competitors, etc. So they seem as though they have a high interest in doing such. So I wouldn't put that past them. I heard you referencing a lot to the Pegasus software. To be honest, I wasn't too abreast with it, but I was doing some quick search, and I found an article, I think it was of last year in the Stabrook News, where they spoke, they had a brief article on that. So definitely you could see that again as being a follow-up to what they had attempted to do before. All right. And then we also see, it's clear also to see with the expansion of e-networks when in comparison to the GTNT, which is the oldest telecommunications network in the country, where e-networks are having far more expansion, access to far more areas, whether it be it cannot be due to financial reason only. We could tell that for sure, because GTNT is the leading telecommunication sector in Guyana, or they should have been. All right, so you can see the restriction to GTNT, but the permission that is given to e-networks. And again, much as we appreciate fast internet, etc., we need to know what would be the after effects of having such a broad scope and coverage over the land of Guyana when it comes to internet, and what would be the effects on us as citizens. And indeed, as you mentioned, spying, it's simple. Like I said, there's so many software that could be easily used to track users, and especially where you have the users of Guyana now being converged onto a single network that is accessible via the PPP. Definitely you can understand where that would lead, because that is at their fingertip. Anything they want to pull up, they can pull it up in the database and reference that information back to the end user. And the end user meaning across multiple devices also, not just as you were mentioning before, the identification of individual device. For example, you have your router connected to their network. It's not going to track just the router's MAC address, etc. It's going to track all the users under that network. Because, for example, for me, let's speak in terms of security. What I do not use is the standard connection offered by these ISPs. All right. So what we use is our customized firmware for our routers. One for those who might be familiar, etc. But it's a Linux-based router that you can be able to track logs, etc. You can track logs, you can do a lot of blocking, you can do a lot of filtering, etc. As you mentioned, the VPN, right now on my router here, I have VPNs that are going out to the network. There is something called Tor, which is TOR. That also helps in scaling back on your identity being exposed. So there are a lot of mitigation measures, but the problem is that most users here, most common citizens in Guyana, just buy the off-the-shelf routers and install them in their homes, and those routers are mostly vulnerable. The only other day, Cisco had an issue where they had to warn the users to upgrade to a more recent firmware, and I'm sure most persons in Guyana did not follow that step, because persons do not go into their devices to do those kind of configuration. But going back to what I use here is a custom firmware that, for example, I remember I was sitting home and I was just reviewing the logs on my router once. Well, I did it multiple times and I do it a bit frequent now. But you should, if you saw the amount of scans, especially it was coming in from China for a huge swath of IP addresses that were just constantly scanning. So what they're normally doing, they're scanning for open ports on your router, trying to find any weak point that they could find. And once they find a port and they know the protocol that is running in the back end, they're going to access your device using remotely, using software in all different types and form. So the possibility of persons getting into your network is even more easier, especially in Guyana, because most persons are not educating themselves, and there's not much, even for GT&T, person, they're handing out those routers, and we would have confronted them in regards to how they're configuring those routers, etc., and what they could put in place to mitigate end users from being affected when browsing the internet. And even for, the immediate step was not taken. So that comes back to now citizens educating themselves, and for those who have knowledge like myself, etc., I would normally work with clients to secure their home, their premises, the network, and all the other devices. For example, for me, I know persons use like cameras, etc. Some persons need to open ports on their router to allow access into their homes, but that also is not too much of a safe thing to do. So what we normally do is on that router you have a VPN. For example, if I'm on the road, I would connect home via VPN first, and then I have access as if I'm under the network locally. So you don't need to expose any of your devices via the internet, especially things like CCTV cameras, etc. Those are easily accessible via the internet, especially if you're still using default credentials, etc. on those devices. And some, even if you're not using default credentials, you can still have it can still be accessed remotely. So that is just the general scope in regards to citizens. But then as we go back to on the governmental level and what they're trying to achieve, it is clear to see, and for me, even the courts, etc., the court, the opposition, and everybody thinking Guyanese need to understand and see what is happening, because we do not connect the dot, because they are so far apart. Especially leading up to the 2015 election, a lot of major projects were hampered, were hindered, and they did not get to complete. I remember they were dealing with the fiber optic along the, when they were trying to pass it through GPL. I don't know if you remember that
yes,
case,
I remember that
but
project.
They were trying to link that up, the fiber optic cable, and then it was supposed to link up with this government cable that was damaged, as you mentioned, with Ramatara's son. That also, but all that was a plan, like I said, and that did not get to go through, but they still went ahead with e-networks, and that is why e-networks is being pushed so much, and having access to areas that other services are not being able to access.
Why is that? Why is that so?
What is that? The limiting access to
why
areas?
is e-network being granted this position of advantage, as I see?
Yes. You see, some I think it's because of a new company and because they have good staff. Because indeed, it's a company of good standard, but the back end of it is that they would have been existing around that time, because the coverage areas that they're trying to go to. For example, I noticed they went to Linden even before GT&T could have offered. I know DSL and so it was there, but the fast internet, which is the fiber optic, they managed to reach to Linden, and then I know networks are still planning to go up there as well, but they went shortly before. It cannot be the case of resources, so it must be the case of geographical limitations. For example, if you call into certain companies, they would explain to you that, hey, due to certain restrictions through policies of the government, etc., they cannot expand into certain areas. But then you notice so certain specific companies are being allowed access ahead of companies that have far more experience, etc. For example, GT&T, Digicel, because both of them had an advantage over e-networks. But it's not just because of them, but it's because of policies and politics that limits their access to certain area. So while we might assume that it's just based on the limitations of whether it's financially, etc., it is in the background where they're being limited from targeting certain areas. And that comes back to again, the more citizens they cover, they manage to expand and have that coverage over, again, it consolidates under one network. And what more could be easier than going to the network that you control to extract those information?
Very well. On a lighter side, we have you with all of this knowledge and technical know and so on, and you got me getting knocked off every 2 morning from the internet with my program.
No, well, you remember I had briefed you. I normally mention, I try to contact you. I try to contact the other shows and assist them in the background what they can do to mitigate those issues. Most of the times, well, it depends on what it is, because you have to really scan the network to see if it's being limited on your end, or if, because limitations can happen either on your end, or it could also happen on the ISP's end, and that is what you need to do, is to do tests to confirm on which side is you're being limited. For example, you can have overlapping wireless channels, and most persons are not aware of that, and that is one of the concerns that we have with GT&T, who continues to roll out those the common routers without them being configured properly. For example, they have them on the 40 megahertz bandwidth channel. So you browsing your network, but what happened? You overlapping. Let me start from the beginning. Okay, so for wireless networks, if you're on the 2.4 gigahertz network, there are 3 non-overlapping channels. All right, channels 1, channel 6, and channel 11. All right, those are the non-overlapping channels. But what GT&T does, and we notice it's a common trend now, is that they have the routers coming configured on, for example, channel 3 or channel 2. That then overlaps channel 1 and channel 6. All right, or something that comes on channel 7 that overlaps channel 6 and channel 11. So while you might be assuming that it might be a ISP issue, sometimes it's just maybe a neighbor comes up and puts on a route at a certain time that affects your channel without you even knowing. So there's certain applications that you can put on your phone, and you can scan to see overlapping channels, and what you do, you try to find one that is more suitable. Also, your router, due to congestion, your router itself is going to depends on if it's set to auto to select the channel automatically. Is going to try to find the next available channel, but it's going to have your router hopping around looking for any available channel, and if all are occupied, it's going to just stick to the least congested one, and that also it may not help. So what I encourage users to do is to ensure that the devices are connected via wired connection, which is Ethernet, within the homes. So you hardly try to use wireless connection, especially when you're doing like the programs, etc., that you guys would normally do. You always try to keep your device on a wired network and not on a wireless network. Then you can eliminate all those possibilities that I explained there just now.
And then I understand too that there are these domestic devices that will also interfere with your channel, like the microwaves and so.
Yes,
phones,
microwave, you have
all
cordless
on the 2.4.
phones, correct. Correct. Children's toys, those toys. So some of the toys, not all, because some of the toys work on the same 2.4. It's the 2.4 gigahertz. So when you're buying equipment, etc., you just need to observe what are on the 2.4 gigahertz, or what affects the 2.4 gigahertz channel, and you try to stay away from those. But there are mitigative measures. Like I said, your router can do it automatically, but it then also affects you sometimes, especially if you're doing like live stream, etc., where it has to be changing channels. To limit that effect. But like I said, I always encourage users to use the wire, because even for your mobile phone, right now I have my adapter here on my desk, where you could plug the Ethernet directly into your phone. You can use it, so even if you're live streaming from your phone directly, whatever you're using, you can still manage to plug Ethernet cable directly into whatever device you're using. And most of those things sell. Pardon?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm saying most of these items are available locally. Is available in Georgetown. So for those who I can assist, I normally assist. Like I said, I try to assist. Even some of the ministers, I try to in the background once they're facing difficulties, I would try to engage them and give recommendations, etc. But you don't want to be too intrusive into people's space, so I just give the recommendation, and persons, if they choose to follow or not, then they reap the benefit.
Well, I would have to invite you to come to Buxton and be intrusive. And let's work on fixing my network. Because, strange enough, let me tell you this. I get the most challenges when I connect to Ethernet. Because I don't use a lot of devices here when I'm broadcasting.
Yes.
So if I were to take the Ethernet cable straight off of GT&T and connect it to my laptop, I am sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I can expect to get knocked off. Right?
Okay.
To mitigate that, I have to go through a router.
Okay. No. So you're saying you mean you connect the cable directly to GT&T's modem? Is what you're saying, or
yes,
just the cable from the router to your device?
I'm saying if I go directly from GT&T, off of GT&T into my laptop, right?
No.
I am sure I will get bounced somewhere along the line. Right?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not sure why, but it all depends on the configuration also. It takes a while sometimes to pull the IP address from their network. So for example, if you just had it in your router and you switch it over to your device directly, there's a delay in terms of pulling a new MAC address.
Come on, man. Come on. Come, man. Come. Come on, man.
You know, I'm always willing to give
No. When I say come, I am saying that which you're pointing out there. Like I said before, I dabble in this thing. I actually used to do a wireless internet network in my community. I used to sell bandwidth and all of that, so I understand a lot of these things, right?
Okay.
This is a directly targeted situation I can see. Somebody has accessed it, either by hacking or whatever, and so as long as I don't put the necessary interfaces to prevent them, they will knock me off. That's all I'm saying. Anyways,
okay.
But
definitely I can pass through. But you see, those things have certain implications. That's why for me, you always want to publicize.
True.
For me also, those things could get done even remotely as well, because I don't need to be at the customer's premises.
I know that too.
There's a lot of remote access softwares.
I know that too.
TeamViewer and all those common ones. So you would be able to troubleshoot even remotely. Because most person would call in with issues, and you would just be able to troubleshoot it and have the matter rectified. If it's on the customer side, if it's on the ISP side, well, obviously, you would need to see what even for the one that I use here, the router gives me access to certain reports, so I could see at a certain time and I could submit that report. So because we did it for certain ISPs. For example, I'm sure everybody knows of Atlantic Wireless and the terrible network that they have.
Ridiculously terrible.
What we were doing is submitting reports to them because they weren't listening to clients as they calling and make reports. So what we started to do is to set up specific routers with specific software on them, firmware, and have those firmware log the information and keep a proper history, which is on a graph, and you would be able to submit those information to them. And then they have proof that, hey, this is what is happening. And that was a bit more persuasive, and they came and they looked, but obviously it remains the same. But I'm saying that you have that information to show proof that this is happening at a specific time. You submit it to the ISP, and the ISP needs to give explanation as to why this is occurring, and they need to come up with and do their investigation, etc., and actually respond to you. So what you normally do is submit it to what do you call it, the organization, not Bureau of Standards, sorry. There's gee, I forgot the name. Interact with them a few times. I interacted with them a few times, and we had success with it, especially when it comes to ISP, having them challenge the ISPs to rectify those issues.
You're talking about the PUC?
Yes, that's it, the PUC, Public Utility Commission.
Yes.
So we normally approach them with those kind of reports, ensure it's formulated properly, and they're very helpful. At least for me, I know they've been very helpful over the years in multiple areas, multiple service providers, etc. And they have been on their case and having them either to implement refunds, either rectify the matter immediately, things like that. but they follow up. They even check back with you to ensure that you're satisfied. If you're not satisfied, then they go back to that ISP to ensure that they do those follow-ups. But obviously, with how things are now, I don't know how effective they are at this moment with the the current government, etc. Because I haven't really approached them in a little while.
Very well. I see some people are asking me for your number. Do you want to publicize the business or keep it low?
No, I don't publicize it at the moment.
Very
What you
well.
could do if you want to share it with them directly, you can share it in the background, but obviously those are the person that you know.
Right,
All
right.
There's not, because their aliases on there that hides behind the fake names, etc.
Yes, I know, I know.
Because
I know.
like I said, the information for me is public. I don't have a problem in terms of being anonymous, etc. Whatever the case is, for me, it's about assisting citizens and allowing them to become conscious of the technology around them, the effects that it has both on them, on the neighbors, on Guyana in general, the citizens, etc. So you help them to become more conscious of what is taking place and what they can do to mitigate certain issues. And we do it, like I said, for businesses, for residents, in different areas, assisting with configuration, even with VPN, as I was explaining to you with the software that we run, we allow remote access for persons, for example, they may not have, because GTT, they do not always give you a public IP. Actually, most ISPs now, as of recent, because they're running out of public IP addresses, they're giving you a local IP address. So, for example, if you want to host an application at your home, you wouldn't be able to do so. They're going to have a lot of restrictions on your network, etc. For example, gaming. Some persons have a lot of issues with gaming, where you can't game locally because of the limitation that they put on the configuration of the on the WAN, which is on their end, in the wide area network. Those limitations now cause effects in other areas in your personal life, which is, like I said, for children's gaming, for watching certain TV shows, etc. Certain geo IP restrictions, just because there's a new issue here as well, to where you can't access certain services because of your geolocation. Right, so even and that is what they track, because especially for you guys, because you're on the GTT, they use a proxy, and a proxy is like a single device responsible for multiple devices within their network. So they're going to see that public IP address. So any issues that happens to that address, any user that abuses some site, they're going to block that IP address, and then that now becomes an issue for all the other users that might be blocked on a specific service. So again, it's about just allowing citizens to become conscious of the environment to become conscious of the environment and take necessary actions. And indeed, you see, because even though these things are happening, I don't think citizens are really conscious of what is happening and how easy this is going to creep up on us. And once they have complete coverage over this country, it's going to become an issue, because I was looking at even some of the hubs that were set up by the opposition, that they were taken down, they were done away with, and then recently I saw them posting in the news that they're now recreating hubs at certain areas around the city. Now, it's strange that they would have taken down some and then put up back, but again, it might come back to central management, because you need to understand that in the person that manages these data centers and the hubs, that the central hub, like all the outlets just spoke, and the hub would be in Georgetown, and the hub and spoke network is going to connect back to their network. So all those traffic are going to be monitored again, and you see, they put persons in place to have access to these informations, even if you think that, okay, it's the government e-governance program. It's also, obviously, you're going to expect it to be monitored by them, but then because of who's in government and the lack of respect for privacy, as we saw in the past, we could expect certain things to happen. So again, like I said, while we appreciate the expansion of these hubs, etc., to give free internet access to communities, a person just need to be conscious of what they're doing, and if they want to do certain things, know what to be done locally on their devices, example of VPN, whatever, to protect the privacy and the information that they're accessing.
Good. It's now 8 hours 24, and I must thank you for your great insight. I am sure people are clearer, because you know how I could be jumbled in my explanations.
Yeah, Yes, I was listening. But no, you made a good attempt, man. You're very fairly knowledgeable than most person that I would interact with. So you
Right.
didn't do a bad job.
Yes, I'm sure people have a clear understanding of what we're dealing with and how
Yes, yes,
what are
yes.
some of the things they can do to protect themselves and their devices. So thank you for
Correct,
that. Of
correct.
course, I know you will stay tuned in case other matters come up. You feel free to call in and
Yes.
lend your 2 cents to it. Right?
Most definitely, brother.
Right. Thank you
Glad to
very
help.
much.
Thank you.
And of course, we're going to talk about checking me out and so on, whether remotely or otherwise.
Sure,
Good.
sure, no problem.
It's now 8 hours 25 and the lines are open. 6225933 is the number to call as we're having this discussion on your privacy and the government listening and the government watching and the use of Pegasus, a spyware that is described as most dangerous to democratic practices, created by the NSO group in Israel. Good? Let me see if there are any voice notes as yet. I don't see any voice notes. I am told that on page 17 of Kaicho News today, the NSO group launches inquiry into police hacking claims. Right? We have a first caller. Caller live, good morning.
Morning, Tadaki, and great program. Morning, Guyana. Love the information and the topic. Didn't get a chance to hear what Coffee had said, but I'll guess listen again. So basically, all the information you provided, along with others, just say that Guyanese are screwed. That's what it looks like. And I think in terms of getting the information to a wider audience in Guyana, it should be one of the things that KAMSTV should try to do. I know the internet is, part of it, but getting this information to a wider audience, inform them, is a good thing, which should, guys should try to work on, because the more Guyanese know, I think, they're going to better position themselves to, rise up, or either they simply just don't care with the information being provided and just throw up their hands and say what we can do. But to me, it seems like even on the APNU side, that they do not have the will to do what is right, because they're actually, I guess, agree with the status quo of allowing the PPP to just do what they want. Didn't hear much on the budget debate about this oil that Jack Dio and along with the other wells that they're cultivating. Those are amongst of billions of dollars, but I have not heard a lot of information on the opposition side of bringing that information to the fore. When we go back to information technology, are we cultivating African Guyanese to be export in these matters? Because what's been happening is that it is controlled by the Indian-dominated, society, and it just seems like we are being left out on all corners. So that's a question that we need to ask if we are actually teaching our children about information technology, telecommunications, and stuff like that. So spying is what the PPP do, day in and day out. I listened in a little bit on the budget debate there, and the monies that they're collecting from taxpayers or spending, there's no account for it in terms of where it's going and who it's going to. all of that is nefarious things that we know the PPP is good for. Just murder us, mafia style. And how do you know when Roger Khan was in Guyana? It just seems like they have turned a blind eye on all his atrocities and be captured in Trinidad, brought to the United States. When he gets back to Guyana, they can't even do nothing. They have nothing on him. So he's back in Guyana, continuing his riches, and not, so it just seems like Guyana is not a real place where you can get away with murder. And they used to got a television show called How to Get Away with Murder. And it just seems to be, that's what's happening in Guyana. We bring up one thing and we just simply highlight it for one day. And then we moved on. I mean, the biggest cocaine bust, we've got the Henry Boys, we've got Andres, all of these things that have taken place and no accountability. And how do you have one position, what is this, the information czar, as you said, making more money than the opposition was actually what is it, that they allotted the opposition for. Matter of fact, the opposition didn't even get what they asked for. So it was 37 million last year. This year is 27 million, while the PPP got $1.8 billion. How the hell do we expect things to actually change when they're actually running away with all the money that Guyana's got? I really do not see any future for Guyana under those circumstances, and the pressure needs to be put more. We got to put pressure on our leaders, to put pressure on the government. They've got the guy, and he's got to get out there, man. I mean, you've been preaching it day in and day out. And that's my take.
Thank you, caller. Our contributor this morning did mention Tor. T-O-R, that is. It's actually a browser. And so those of you who want to feel safe browsing anonymously and so on, or protecting your IP and so on, you can go and look for Tor. It's a browser, and you will have to download the installation, the EXE as we call it, and install your program. And so instead of browsing from the other known browsers, you can browse from Tor, right? And that protects you. That offers you some amount of protection while browsing. Caller, you live. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam, and to everyone listening. Now, I really learned a lot from the program. But the individual who was giving all those things, what this and that, he is a person who is on the program. And he noticed you are getting those type of trafficking.
Stop. You're going to a place where I'm not going to be happy with you. Please don't go there. I know this individual personally, and the onus is on me at any time to invite him to do anything I want.
Okay, well,
thank you.
Well, how we put it, is what your mind, what you pick up from a conversation. Anyway, moving along. Now, a lot of people had GT&T service way back when. God, GT&T, they give everybody landline. And when the advent of cell phone picked up, a lot of people allow the landline system to go down the drain and started to use Digicel phone. They didn't want nothing to do with GT&T. So the lines went down. Then GT&T, remember when they had dial-up anywhere you could go? I was with the same E-networks. Then the country went back when GT&T took away all those people with dial-up, and they started to provide internet service and access. So I went to GT&T. But E-network come up, and lots of people leave and go to E-network. Hence, they are now being faced with the problem, because at first E-network used to offer a television service. You pay for the thing, And when you take their service to your television, you used to be knocked off of Channel 9, WRHM, and Travis Chase 67 or 69. Those TV stations, and I believe Sharma was affected. You couldn't get their TV stations. You could only get 65, 11, and 69 or Channel 18. Those were on the learning channel, and the rest was what E-Network could have provided. So lots of people who are on the E-Network server have the problem. So there is that is one of the thing going on. Now the caller mentioned that we are not hearing nothing about the budget. I think this problem that you have brought up from yesterday to now is a valuable topic that we should listen to and get a feel with what is going on. Because if we don't do this, the things, the program will not be, people will not be able to follow the program because you wouldn't be getting the vital information going out to many people because of what is going on. So I think that this type of program, there is a need for it to take precedence over other matters. Because we did talk on the budget a lot last week, and we will talk on the budget. But if you ain't getting the information out, because the program is being attacked the way it is, you wouldn't be doing nothing talking about the budget, because people still wouldn't hear the program. So let me try to get this out and think. And all the things that the man is talking about, I don't really know. So when you're going to explain this and that, I wouldn't understand. All I know to put on my phone, talk, type, make little life. But to go into the field that he was explaining there, for people like me, it will be a field like if it's a go and open up a person and tie off a blood vessel. You can't do it because it's a real technical field. So as much as he can put out little tidbits that we could follow, we should try to do it. Because I don't know nothing. By the way, yesterday I went back to the station and they finally gave me the phone. Well, they're in the trench. Because I ain't gonna got a phone like that with a bug in it, destroying me life. That don't link up to Pegasus. So it didn't then know way, so I could talk a little bit. And about the thing with the boy you explained about a foreign phone number calling your phone. I used to get calls from many foreign phone numbers. And after listening to you yesterday, I deleted them. I didn't really call because me phone has only got $200 and I can't call them number. So I didn't really open up the call or anything. So I'll just keep putting out and we will try to follow and see what we could do with our devices. Last, somebody put up, you shouldn't get smartphone. Use your Mango Pelto. To the person, you're a great dunce because if you don't have a smartphone, all right.
Rhonda, you can make your point without insulting people.
All right, sorry about that. Because if you got a Mango Pelto, according to the individual, you cannot get on the program. You gotta have a smart device. And everybody, I got a laptop. I had the devil's own job to sit and work with it. Because after I had smartphone, I forget how to use the laptop. I had to go back to people and let them show me. So everybody now trying to upgrade. And it's not that because you upgrade, you must be penalized for upgrading. Because long ago, people used to get donkey cart, and them same people were at donkey cart driving a Raycon and them big fancy vehicle. Well, gone now. Land Cruiser and all them different things. Must the people still remain, instead of buying a Raycon Jeep, get a donkey cart to carry them around? No,
Thank you, Rondo.
got to upgrade.
Thank
But
you.
all we got to do, be watchful how we upgrade. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rondo. Yes, I said I will get a mango pelter. That doesn't stop me from having a smart device. But I can decide what I will do with my mango pelters against this small device. Right? Calling live, good morning.
Yes, very good morning to you, Kilaki. Thank God for people like you and what you're doing. A man truly with a heart for the people and for the fight against oppression by a totalitarian and dictatorship PPP. I want to bring this key concern of mine and intelligently political strategy and thoughts to the leadership of Guyana, and this goes directly to R.B. Norton. This goes directly to the entire opposition coalition forces. At present, there is a situation between Russia and America on the rights of Ukraine's sovereignty and its economic freedom, in which Russia wants to impose itself against Ukraine. Now, in the sense of negotiating, you cannot negotiate from a position of weakness, but of strength. America has the strength and the capability to fight any aggression by Russia. What capability and strength does the coalition in combination of itself and its leaders are willing to prepare and take a stand against this dictatorship of a government, government by Trump, ABC, and the Caribbean heads of government? We have installed an evil cabal, and to date, none of these sinister, evil ABC Caribbean leaders have able to speak anything against these economic terrorists that we have in Ghana for PPP. It's time our leadership understand weakness is not going to get us anywhere. It's not going to bring the changes to bring real life to our people. So if the leaders of the coalition are not ready to stand up to the PPP, they're not ready to be seen as leaders. So Mr. Norton, if you worth your salt, you better keep your word, or we will have you to leave like Ranger. We need strong leaders, not weak, feeble men, but strong men. Thank you for listening. I hope that they're paying attention to what I just said. Thank you.
caller. Voice note.
Thank you.
May God peace and blessings be upon you, Kadaki, and your viewers and all the listeners. I don't agree with the caller, the first caller, that said that the Guyanese people are doing with the information.
Call on the line.
I think, for me, I think we all should start doing drastic things to let the PPP know that they cannot stop us from talking. With all this software that they got, Pegasus and spying on people and all of that, people has a right to speak out when they see a wrong. They first supposed to change it with their hands, then their mouth, and then, by example. But the thing about life is, the PPP is a very, very ugly group of people that sits there and wants to control everything, all your movements and everything. You cannot control people. You can only control things that you could purchase. And they must realize that that's the only thing that they could control. Because people are going to do whatever they want to do, regardless of what you say. That's why you have laws and bylaws, because people will do what they want to do. And I don't think people should be scared of the PPP. They're trying to drive fear in the people of Guyana. And the people in Guyana should not be scared of a group of people like the PPP, who Jack Deal wants to be, he's the third-time president, and he wants to be like Vladimir Putin and all of that stuff. It's not right. You cannot treat your citizens like that. Then you complain. I look at the budget last night. They got Phillips, the prime minister. He can't even say what these monies is allocated for. How much, what community is supposed to get these relief and all of this thing. And then you worried about, you give the opposition this little bit of money, but you give a information project 3 times the amount of money that Region 4 didn't get. Region 4 got 18 million. You get a small $50-something million. One man, one single man, you get $50-something million. You give the president's wife $50 million for she budget. And all of these things. These things are not fair. This money is the Guyanese people money. Natural Resource Fund money is for the Guyanese people. It's not for you, the way you feel like doing with it. And they are so wrong. We, the people, got to come up with a solution. Mr. Narden has to come up with a solution along with other people. And citizens of Guyana got to come up with a solution. And my solution is get a second state. The black people by themselves and the Indians by themselves. Just like all the white people do in America. Those way gotta get a second state. That's exactly what's got to happen in this country. Black people gotta empower themselves, enrich themselves, get their own communities and them kind of thing. And those the answer to this madness we're going on with the PPP. And everybody got to come out and vote against them 2023. Because that's when I predict the elections. You have a very good day, sir.
Thank you for that voice note. Call it live.
Hi,
Thank you for holding.
Good morning to listening public. This thing about the spying equipment, I want these guys to know that they might be spying on the citizen, but people might be spying on them, the international communities, right? Who wants something from this country, right? Might be spying on them to see how they could get it, right? So when they're spying on us, people would be spying on them, right? Next thing I want to talk about is, I've seen a couple of weeks ago, a lot of persons in our society, in the opposition and so, right, were congratulating me for, oh, well done, congratulations and all these things. I want just to tell them that our people, I want to know how our people could forget certain things so easily, what Mia did to us. And then, persons from the opposition, they were congratulating her, oh, well done and all these things. They don't know how she won the elections. And I think it was a payback for what she did to us, right? By Mercury or whoever, right, did what they had to do for her. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Voice note.
Alternative voice note. For a sense of clarity, there is no way of getting around GT&T in terms of communications in Guyana. Even if a person comes to visit Guyana with a phone from New York to spend a week in Guyana, their signals have to be routed through Guyana's Earth station on the seawall or at Victoria or wherever. Digicel cannot get around GT&T. Digicel has to use Guyana's satellites and antennas. They have to come through GT&T. E-Networks in Georgetown, well, that is a baby, a little baby operation. They don't have the license or authority to circumvent GT&T. GT&T is the state. All communications in and out of Guyana have to go through GT&T. The only exception there may be the American Embassy. And I don't know what the arrangements are, but I want to say if you're sending a signal to Digicel or E-Networks, they have to use GT&T's satellites and Earth station to process all of their signals. They have what you call dedicated lines, separate lines, but there's no way of getting around GT&T. So we shouldn't allow E-Networks to try to fool us, okay? Because the Ministry of Security and Communication will not allow. That's not the way it's structured, according to Guyana law. So GT&T is no getting around it. Good.
I think I'm at variance with the opinions of this voice note, because I know for a fact that E-Networks was able to land their own fiber optic cable. And all of the services that are being offered are fiber optic based, if I can say that. Good. So in terms of having to go through GT&T, there was a time when E-Networks had to buy bandwidth, etc. from GT&T. But like I keep saying, they actually were allowed to acquire and land their own fiber optic. So I don't know if that arrangement still stands, that they have to go through GT&T. And even if they have to go through GT&T for some amount of services, my old belief is that those things which they want to do in a clandestine manner can be done without going through GT&T. We know for a fact Digicel, you notice I think by Jagdio, the PPP had threatened to take Digicel to court if they haven't. I think they have filed some matter in terms of breach of the laws of Guyana, in terms of the telecommunication laws, because they accuse Digicel of circumventing GT&T and basically doing their own long distance calls and so on. So in terms of Digicel, yes, I know they still are required to go through GT&T, but they were able to circumvent. And so, I'm not sure, I don't think they were able to land their own fiber optic. And so if you have E-Network, which has landed its own fiber optic, who's to say they are not circumventing and can't? Voice note.
Good morning, Mr. Amsterdam and viewers. What I would like to say this morning is that we must understand that Mr. Norton is not a Hercules. He's not God. He didn't come to save the world. And he alone would not be able to do anything. We have to work collaboratively to get the work done. We just can't sit back and say, Mr. Norton came in and he should do this and he should do that. He alone can do it without the support. So all of those people who are calling and saying that Mr. Norton should do this and Mr. Norton should do that, they should stop the support from behind the phone and throw their support to help Mr. Norton. Also, people need to stay current with what's going on. Yes, Mr. Norton was elected the leader, but there are still internal struggles that have to be straightened out, that they're still working on. And it's only so much he can do until such time, okay? So we must be careful. We must understand that it's not a one-man show. And if we don't throw our support and help, whether it's physically being there on the ground or even financially, we won't be able to get it done.
Voice note.
Good morning, viewers, Brother Kadaki. Good morning. I'm not much of a IT person, but what that caller just said about you cannot get wrong to GT&T, part of it might be so, but the E-Network can have their own program. without having to get the all clear from GT&T. Remember that TNT, I think that's what it's called here in the States, is a partner in GT&T. And if they so want and know who owns the e-network in Guyana, they can allow all the alleyways and byways for them to be spying on the Guyanese people. So you got to take into the facts that GT&T can be infiltrated by the e-network through the other part of GT&T, which is TNT in the United States. If I am wrong, somebody can correct me if it's not TNT in the United States that are partner with GT&T. Thank you.
For my recollection, it is ATN, the Atlantic Telenetwork, as against AT&T. I think it's ATN, right? Some people are saying ATT. I don't know. But I seem to believe or seem to remember it was ATN that, anyways, it's an American telecommunication company. Right, it's now 4 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. We can take another call and then we'll have to wrap it up. Remember, I'm apologizing for the absence of Dr. Hines today because he is unwell. And like I said, nothing life-threatening, so don't be too worried. Voice notes.
Good morning, Kadaki. Atlantic Telenetwork was one of the companies that suffered so that e-networks could extend certain areas. Atlantic Telenetwork. Good morning, Kadaki. Atlantic Telenetworks was one of the companies that suffered because of e-networks. They couldn't extend it beyond a certain limit. I know at one time they shut them down from DR Spark.
Okay, so I'm gathering from this caller that the ATN I'm talking about is local and it is the ATT, which is US based. Right? Like I said, sometimes you all gotta forgive me, you know. I big. 6225933 is the number to call. You have 3 minutes to program time. And so I'll give you the opportunity to make one final call or I'll wrap it up as it is right now. You're tuned to the BUXTONIAN Morning Time, and of course we've been talking about Pegasus, not the hotel, but a spyware which is described as a threat to democracy everywhere. Recently acquired by the government of Guyana. And you know what they do with that, like they did with the spy laptop, right? And so citizens, you are aware and you ought to start to put plans in place to protect your privacy, right? Protect your privacy and protect democracy. Thank you for being here this morning with me. I do appreciate your presence. I do encourage you to continue to share the live, share the platform, inform people of KAMSTV, encourage them to join us at program time, and you yourself continue to support in whatever way you can. Let me say to you, like I always do, I always say when I do charity, as we like to call it, I do it quietly. And as of last Friday, I started the feeding program, which I promised I was going to start for some of the grade 6s in our community. I'm currently doing 20 lunches for those children. My intention is to eventually expand it. But I'm still monitoring it. It was the first occasion last Friday. I think it was successful. The feedback I got is that the children were quite contented. They think I'm a good cook, right? And that will continue this Friday. They are going to be fed again this Friday. And certainly I will continue that. after about a first month or so, I will have a good understanding of what I'm dealing with. And certainly, I want to extend it to another primary school in the community. I already have someone doing the necessary research at that primary school. Good, so I might very well be calling on you at some point in time for your support of that program as we expand. Cartridge, Winarch, thank you for your support, your commitment. Cartridge World Latonia, Billboards Advertising KAMSTV. Very well. Go for it. Those of you who have ideas of what we can do to make KAMSTV more popular and more far-reaching, I encourage you. You can undertake it, or you can assist us to undertake it, whatever your choice. At the end of the day, I think what we want is to get more of this information into the homes, into the world. Good. Thank you very much, and stay safe. Remember, COVID is real. Protect yourselves, and by that, you will protect others too. Goodbye. See you. I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that Dr. Hines may be able to be on tonight. Tonight he's supposed to have Eric Phillips, I think, right, on Politics 101. But like I said, he's unwell currently. It's not life-threatening, and the possibility is he will be much improved later in the evening. So be sure to check for Politics 101 tonight. And join me tomorrow morning as we continue our varying discussions on BUXTONIAN Morning Time. I heard a song, and let me see if it's a voice note. No, it isn't. So have a great day. Goodbye.